Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a topic that feels, well, almost like something ripped straight from a modern-day thriller, doesn't it?
It really
Yet
does.
it's unfolding right now. This surprising intersection of cryptocurrency, political power, and some pretty extraordinary financial dealings.
hmm
So our mission today is to take this stack of sources you've shared with us, particularly an article detailing former President Trump's recent moves in the crypto world, and really pull out the key insights for you.
Right.
You're going to hear about some, eye-popping sums of money, a really significant pivot in stance from a former president.
A major pivot.
Yeah, and how various agencies are sort of navigating this rapidly evolving digital frontier. It's fascinating how influence and policy can get tangled up with these new financial technologies. So what exactly are we getting into here?
Well, what's truly fascinating, I think, is just how quickly this whole landscape has shifted. We're looking at a situation where a former president, someone who once expressed, pretty deep skepticism about cryptocurrencies,
Right, remember that.
is now not only deeply involved, but actively promoting it. And at the same time, we're seeing regulations getting significantly looser under his administration.
Okay.
So this deep dive will explore the specific details of these dealings, the policy shifts that came with them, and yeah, the very strong reactions from ethics watchdogs and political figures too.
Let's start with that shift then,
Yeah.
because the first thing that really jumps out from these sources is this, well, dramatic reversal. Can you walk us through that?
Sure.
I mean, the sources point out, back in 2021, the former president told Fox News that Bitcoin seems like a scam. Pretty blunt.
And blunt, yes.
And even earlier, July 2019, he apparently posted that unregulated crypto assets can facilitate unlawful behavior, including drug trade,
Right.
and called their value highly volatile and based on thin air. But now, he's actively promoting crypto, pledging to make the U.S. the, quote, crypto capital of the planet. That's quite a U-turn, isn't it?
It's a huge U-turn. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's just a profound change in approach. It really reflects a strategic embrace, it seems, of a sector he once viewed with pretty strong suspicion.
Okay, so not just words.
Exactly. This shift isn't just rhetorical. The material we've looked at shows it's backed by actual new pro-crypto policies. It signals a deliberate move, it seems, to align with this emerging financial landscape.
And, wow, if you thought that pivot was striking, the details of how this translates into actual dealings are, well, they're even more compelling. The reports we reviewed describe the launch of this Trump Memecoin. Apparently that happened just days before his presidential inauguration.
Right, the timing is interesting there.
And then there's this story of a private dinner, May 22nd, followed by a White House tour the next day, exclusively for 25 top Memecoin buyers.
So access tied to buying the coin.
Exactly. And one detail that really brings this home.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrency multi-billionaire Justin Sun, he reportedly flaunted a $100,000 Donald Trump-branded watch. Why? Because he bought $20 million of that Trump meme coin.
20 million. Wow.
Yeah, he was the top buyer among 220 people invited to this exclusive dinner at Trump's Virginia Golf Club. And these events, they weren't just social calls. They apparently served as a highly effective sales engine,
Generating funds.
generating significant funds, reportedly raking in something like $148 million. Much of it, the sources say, from anonymous and foreign buyers for Trump and his partners.
And that's precisely why this raises such, well, red flags for some people. Because meme coins themselves, as the sources detail, they're often based on internet jokes.
Right. Not much underlying value.
Exactly. No inherent value, often, and their prices can swing wildly. They're incredibly risky investments.
Okay.
So you have former federal prosecutor Paul Rosenzweig quoted saying that Trump profiting from his presidential meme coin is a, and I quote, textbook example of what the framers wanted to avoid. He called it self-enrichment.
Strong words.
Which the founders feared most in a leader. And then you have Stephen Levitsky, a Harvard professor and expert on authoritarian regimes, stating, "I have never seen such open corruption in any modern government anywhere."
That's quite a statement.
It is. And what these powerful statements really underscore isn't just, individual concern. It's a systemic worry about the potential erosion of long-standing ethical guardrails when these new technologies meet political ambition.
And the meme coin, it turns out, is just one piece of this puzzle.
Sure.
Right? The material we have also details an even larger, more complex financial venture here.
That's right. World Liberty Financial, or WLF.
WLF.
Cool.
Okay. So Trump and his two older sons apparently launched this last fall, holding a 60% stake.
Mm-hmm.
And that same multi-billionaire, Justin's son, he reportedly invested another $75 million in WLF.
So he's involved in both ventures.
Seems so.
Yeah.
And the State Democracy Defenders Fund, a watchdog group, estimated WLF was worth around $2.9 billion by mid-March.
Billion with a B.
Billion with a B. And Reuters revealed WLF had recently raised over $500 million, with the Trump family reportedly getting about 75% of the crypto token sales.
Wow.
We also learned that Steve Witkoff, he's a real estate billionaire, was Trump's special envoy to the Middle East. He apparently helped found WLF as a stake.
Okay, another connection.
Yeah, and his son Zach, along with Trump's sons, have been promoting WLF in the Middle East and other places.
Right, and this leads into some pretty significant international connections. One deal that stands out involved WLF playing a key role in a massive $2 billion investment.
$2 billion. From where?
From an Abu Dhabi financial fund called MGX. It's backed by the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, and they invested this $2 billion into Binance, the world's largest crypto exchange.
Okay, so UAE money via WLF's coin into Binance. How did that work?
Well, as part of the deal, MGX bought $2 billion worth of a WLF stablecoin. It's called USD1.
A stablecoin, right. That's supposed to be less volatile?
Exactly, pegged usually to something like the US dollar. So MGX bought $2 billion of this WLF stablecoin to then invest in Binance.
Okay, got it. But Binance, they've had some issues, haven't they?
They certainly have. This is particularly noteworthy because Binance pleaded guilty in 2023 to violating U.S. money laundering laws. Other violations, too. Huge fine, $4 billion.
$4 billion fine.
And their ex-CEO, Changpeng Zhao, CZ, he also pleaded guilty, violating the Bank Secrecy Act, failing on anti-money laundering. He served a 4-month jail term last year.
Right.
And here's another timing point the reports highlight. The SEC apparently dismissed a civil lawsuit against Binance at the end of May.
Okay.
Shortly after Binance began listing the Trump family stablecoin, USD1, for trading.
That timing again.
Indeed. Paul Pelletier, a former acting chief of the Justice Department's fraud section, he described these kinds of SEC moves to ease enforcement as sending crypto fraudsters a, quote, welcome mat of impunity. He called the Binance lawsuit dismissal a natural consequence.
So, pretty intricate web there. International deals, major crypto players with legal troubles, and then these regulatory shifts happening alongside.
Exactly. It highlights this new frontier where, financial influence could potentially bypass traditional checks and balances. It makes you wonder about transparency in this digital age.
And beyond these specific deals, WLF and the meme coin, there's this broader pattern you mentioned earlier, the loosening of regulations.
Yes, across several agencies.
The information provided points to changes at the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC,
right, investor protection,
the Justice Department,
prosecuting crime,
and even the Department of Labor,
which oversees retirement funds like 401ks.
So hitting different parts of the system. For instance, the SEC has reportedly eased regulations, pausing or ending 12 cases involving crypto fraud. That includes cases against 3 of Justin's son's own crypto companies.
Justin's son again. Interesting.
And the Justice Department, in an April memo, announced it was closing a national cryptocurrency enforcement team that was set up in 2022, and they cited a Trump executive order as the reason for this policy shift.
So dismantling an enforcement mechanism.
Seems like it. And the Department of Labor, in late May, even rescinded a Biden-era warning it was about using extreme care if 401k plans invested in crypto.
So removing a caution sign for retirement funds.
Basically, yeah. Highlighting how these policy shifts are kind of reaching into everyday financial planning.
And this whole deregulatory agenda, as the reports frame it, it's presented as benefiting not just, Trump's own businesses,
right,
but also big campaign donors who run crypto firms, and even someone like Elon Musk, who holds significant crypto investments himself.
Okay, so wider potential beneficiaries.
That's what the critics argue. Julian Zelizer, the Princeton professor, is quoted saying, policy decisions are being made regarding parts of the financial industry, not to benefit the nation, but his own financial interests.
A serious charge.
It is, and Paul Rosenzweig stressed that these ventures benefit Trump personally, while also helping, quote, tech bro backers who will take full advantage of the end of regulatory enforcement.
So again, that systemic worry about ethics and who benefits from policy change.
Exactly. That seems to be the core concern echoing through these critiques.
Given all this, the scale of the money, the policy shifts, the connections, it's maybe no surprise that it's drawn a firestorm of criticism. What's the heart of that concern, and who are the main voices we're hearing from in the sources?
The criticism, as described in the articles, is definitely intense. It's coming from ethics watchdogs, former prosecutors, academics, and quite a few political figures.
Okay.
Senator Richard Blumenthal, for instance, stated, "With his pay-for-access dinner, Trump put presidential access and influence on the auction block." He called the scope of corruption staggering.
Staggering.
Yeah. Senator Jeff Merkley, along with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, they introduced an End Crypto Corruption bill. It's got endorsements from 22 other Democrats. Merkley called Trump's crypto schemes the Mount Everest of corruption.
Mount Everest. These are strong metaphors.
Very strong. Columbia law professor Richard Burfalt described the crypto ventures and Memecoin events as unprecedented. He said, "I don't think there's been anything like this in American history." He added, "Trump is marketing access to himself as a way to profit his meme coin. It's doubly corrupt."
Doubly corrupt.
And it's not just Democrats or academics. Even former Republican Congressman Charlie Dent, who used to chair the House Ethics Panel, said, "Nobody should be allowed to use their public positions while in office to enrich themselves."
So bipartisan concern on the ethics front, at least from some quarters.
It seems so. And the key theme running through all this is the conflict of interest concern. Kedrick Payne, general counsel at the Campaign Legal Center, noted that Trump having financial stakes in crypto while also deciding how the government regulates it is, quote, unprecedented in modern history.
Yeah, that seems like the core issue.
Payne called it precisely the type of conflict of interest that ethics laws and norms are designed to stop. Now, Trump's team has said his business interests would be in a trust managed by his children, and he wouldn't be involved day to day.
Okay, the standard trust arrangement argument.
Right. But critics argue those commitments have been, quote, dwarfed by his public embrace of these crypto ventures and the whole deregulatory push.
So the actions speak louder than the trust structure, in their view.
That seems to be the argument, yeah.
Okay, so beyond the specific ethics of these deals and the criticism, there are also these broader worries, right? About dialing back regulation in an industry that, let's face it, already faces pretty big challenges.
Absolutely. The risks are significant.
The reports we looked at highlight some really alarming trends. Like a Chainalysis report found North Korean hackers stole $1.34 billion in crypto just in 2024.
Billion. Wow. And likely funding weapons programs.
That's the belief, yeah. The FBI reported crypto-related fraud just soared in 2023. Americans lost $5.6 billion.
$5.6 billion in losses. That's huge.
It is. And we've all seen the headlines, right? High-profile cases like Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX, sentenced to 25 years for cheating customers out of $8 billion.
Right. The FTX collapse was massive.
It really makes you pause and think about the sheer scale of money sloshing around in this new financial world and the potential for things to go wrong.
It absolutely does. And it highlights those inherent risks in the crypto industry. It's been battered by major scandals, persistent worries about transparency. So loosening oversight, which the sources suggest is happening, could potentially just make these problems worse. It could make the landscape even riskier for everyday investors.
Right.
And this ties into legislative efforts, too. There's this Genius Act stablecoin bill that seems poised to pass the Senate.
Okay, what's the concern there?
Well, critics like Senator Elizabeth Warren argued this bill actually loosens regulatory controls in dangerous ways without enough consumer protection. She said, Donald Trump has turned the presidency into a crypto cash machine and argued the bill should have explicitly prohibited the president and his family from profiting from any stablecoin project.
So trying to build safeguards directly into the legislation.
Exactly. It all points to this really critical debate about how society balances encouraging innovation in this new space with putting in place the necessary guardrails to protect people.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, the listener, trying to make sense of a world where digital finance and politics are colliding like this?
Yeah.
We've really delved into a pretty complex web here, these financial ventures, the policy changes, the intense ethical debates, all swirling around cryptocurrency.
And I think this deep dive really highlights that core tension, doesn't it, between wanting to foster innovation in a new financial sector, but also needing to ensure accountability and protection for the public.
Definitely.
It raises these fundamental questions about, where are the boundaries between public service and personal profit, and how are those lines drawn or maybe redrawn when these new technologies emerge?
We've certainly seen a clear shift in rhetoric and policy described in these sources. Billions of dollars changing hands.
Huge sums.
And a really strong pushback from various observers, all happening in a financial space that's still wrestling with major issues of fraud and transparency.
So maybe the important question this leaves you, the listener, with is this. As digital assets get more and more tangled up with global economies and political systems, what are the most critical safeguards society needs? What do we need to put in place to ensure transparency, to prevent illicit activities, and crucially, to protect individual investors?
And maybe, how do we make sure those safeguards are strong enough to actually withstand the influence of powerful interests?
Exactly. That's the challenge ahead.